The myth of human warriors. On the serene planet of Volara, where glowing crystal trees painted the horizon and rivers shimmered with hues of violet, the legends of human warriors were little more than bedtime stories, told around campfires or whispered in darkened halls. These tales spoke of invincible beings who could defy the odds, using their cunning and strength to turn the tide of any battle. But for Elena, a young historian with an insatiable curiosity, the stories carried a spark of truth too bright to ignore. Elena often spent her days in the Grand Archives, a towering structure built from transparent stone, where sunlight danced through etched walls. Every corner held ancient scrolls, holograms, and fragments of history long forgotten by most Volarans. It was here, amidst the dust and silence, that she stumbled upon something extraordinary. It was an artifact, small, unassuming, but unmistakably out of place. The metallic disc was engraved with strange symbols, unlike anything in Volaran history. As Elena ran her fingers over the markings, she felt a peculiar warmth radiate from it, as if it recognized her touch. Her translator device beeped, struggling to decode the symbols, before finally displaying the single word, human. Her heart raced. Could this be proof? For centuries, scholars dismissed humans as mere myth. The stories of their bravery, ingenuity, and unparalleled combat skills were categorized alongside tales of winged dragons and bottomless pits. But Elena had always believed that myths were rooted in some form of truth, and this artifact felt like the first tangible thread she could pull. Eager to share her discovery, she rushed to the History Guild, a grand hall where Volara's finest minds debated and deliberated. As she laid the artifact before them, her voice trembled with excitement. "This is proof," she declared. "The human warriors were real. Their legacy exists, and it's connected to our world." The room erupted in laughter. Elder scholars, draped in flowing robes, shook their heads dismissively. "Elena, you let your imagination run wild," one of them chided. "Humans are nothing but legends to inspire bravery in our youth. Focus on tangible history, not fantasies." Another added, "Even if humans existed, they are long gone. Their so-called warriors would be irrelevant in today's era." Frustrated but undeterred, Elena clutched the artifact tightly. She knew what she had found was real. That night, back in her modest quarters, she combed through every text and holographic record she could find, piecing together fragments of forgotten history. Maps hinted at a distant star system tied to the origins of the myth. Coordinates were scribbled in faded ink, accompanied by cryptic warnings. "Do not seek them, for their path leads to ruin." As her research deepened, she began noticing strange patterns. Historical events that seemed too coincidental. Battles that turned against all odds. Civilizations rising from the brink of destruction, aided by unknown forces. The more she uncovered, the more it seemed that humans were not only real but perhaps still influencing the galaxy in ways unseen. Late one evening, as Elena leaned over her desk, her room's communicator buzzed with an incoming message. She frowned. Only her colleagues ever contacted her, and at this hour, it was unlikely. Hesitantly, she activated the device. A hologram flickered to life, displaying an anonymous message. "They are real, and they are closer than you think." Elena's breath caught. Who had sent this? And what did it mean? Her mind raced with possibilities. The message included no sender details, only a set of coordinates, ones that matched the distant system she had been studying. She felt a chill run down her spine. Was someone guiding her, or was this a trap? Despite her fear, curiosity burned brighter. Elena knew this was a turning point. The artifact, the legends, the message, it all pointed to one truth. The human warriors were no longer just a story. They had left a trail, and she was determined to follow it. Standing by her window, she gazed at the twin moons of Volara. The world outside was quiet, unaware of the storm of questions brewing inside her. For the first time in her life, Elena felt like she was on the edge of something monumental. The myths she had grown up hearing were no longer distant tales. They were threads of reality waiting to be unraveled. Her journey was just beginning. Little did she know, the truth about human warriors was far greater and far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. An encounter in the wilderness. The forest of Valerian, a forbidden expanse on Volara, was a place of untamed beauty and whispered dangers. Dense with towering crystal trees whose translucent leaves refracted light into a kaleidoscope of colors, it was both mesmerizing and eerie. Few dared to venture here. Rumors spoke of strange occurrences, disappearances, unnatural sounds, and sightings of ghostly figures. But Elena was no stranger to venturing where others feared to tread. Clutching the artifact she had discovered, she made her way deeper into the forest. The cryptic message she'd received, with its coordinates, pointed to a location near the forest's heart. Each step into the wilderness felt heavier, the air growing colder despite the warm glow of the bioluminescent flora. Her handheld device beeped softly, confirming she was on the right path. As Elena approached the designated spot, the silence grew deafening. Even the gentle hum of the insects seemed to fade, replaced by an unfamiliar sound, a rhythmic pounding that echoed through the trees. It wasn't natural, like a heartbeat made of thunder. Her curiosity piqued. She pressed on, her senses on high alert. The source of the sound revealed itself as she crested a hill. Below her, in a clearing, was a sight unlike anything she had ever seen. Figures moved with precision and speed, wielding weapons that shimmered with energy. They were humanoid, but their movements were too disciplined, too fluid to be Volarans. Yelena crouched behind a fallen log, her heart pounding in her chest. She watched in awe as the figures engaged in what appeared to be a combat simulation. Their weapons clashed, emitting sparks of blue light, and their strikes were accompanied by sharp commands in a language she didn't recognize. They were training, not in the traditional, ceremonial way of her people, but with an intensity that spoke of preparation for real war. One of them stood out. A tall man with a commanding presence moved through the group, correcting stances and demonstrating techniques. His voice was calm yet firm, his movements swift and calculated. Yelena couldn't look away. This wasn't just a training exercise. It was a masterclass in combat perfection. Suddenly, a branch snapped under her foot, and the sound echoed through the clearing. The figures froze. Before Yelena could retreat, the tall man turned his head sharply in her direction, his piercing eyes locking onto hers even from a distance. He raised a hand, and the others instantly stopped their movements, their weapons lowered but ready. "Come out," his voice boomed, deep and authoritative. "We know you're there." Yelena hesitated, her mind racing. She could run, but she doubted she'd make it far. She could stay hidden, but they already knew she was there. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out from behind the log, clutching the artifact as if it were a shield. The group turned to face her fully, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. The tall man approached, his steps deliberate. Up close, Yelena could see the details of his appearance, his battle-worn armor, the faint scars on his face, and the intensity in his eyes. He was human. There was no doubt about it. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice quieter now, but no less commanding. I found this," Yelena stammered, holding up the artifact. "It led me here. Who are you?" The man's gaze flicked to the artifact, and for a moment, something unreadable passed over his face. He gestured for one of his companions to take it, and they scanned it with a small device. The results seemed to confirm something, as the man nodded slightly. "I should ask you the same question," he replied. "Why are you digging into things you don't understand?" Yelena squared her shoulders, summoning her courage. "Because the stories can't be just myths. The human warriors, your people, they were real. And I want to know why you've been hiding." A murmur ran through the group, but the man silenced it with a glance. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You've seen too much. You can't leave here without understanding what's at stake." Yelena blinked in surprise. "Are you saying you'll let me stay?" "Only if you're ready for the truth," he said. "But know this, once you learn it, there's no turning back." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Yelena hesitated, knowing that whatever lay ahead would change her life forever. But her determination outweighed her fear. She nodded. "Then show me," she said. "I want to understand." The man gestured for her to follow, and the group began to move, their training forgotten. As they led her deeper into the forest, Yelena couldn't help but feel that she had crossed an invisible threshold. The truth about human warriors was within reach, but it was a truth she could never have prepared for. The human training grounds. Yelena followed the group of human warriors deeper into the forest, her mind swirling with questions and her heart pounding with anticipation. Each step felt heavier as the world around her transformed. The wild, chaotic beauty of Valerian gave way to something more structured. Tall crystal trees stood like natural pillars guarding an open area, their branches interwoven with vines that shimmered faintly. In the clearing, Yelena saw what she could only describe as a hidden base. Large metallic structures, half camouflaged by the forest, dotted the landscape. Their sleek design and faint hum of energy spoke of advanced technology far beyond anything Valerans had ever created. Drones zipped silently through the air, scanning the surroundings, while holographic displays flickered near the entrances of several domed buildings. The air was alive with purpose, and Yelena felt like an intruder in a place she could barely comprehend. "This is where we train," Captain Ryland said, breaking the silence. His tone was neutral, but there was a hint of pride in his voice. "Every warrior you see here has dedicated their life to one purpose: preparation." "Preparation for what?" Yelena asked, struggling to keep up with his long strides. He stopped and turned to face her. "To fight a war your people don't even know exists." The weight of his words hung in the air, but before Yelena could press further, Ryland gestured toward a nearby training area. It was an open space surrounded by energy shields, where groups of humans were engaged in various exercises. Some practiced hand-to-hand combat, their movements impossibly fast and precise. Others wielded weapons that glowed with an otherworldly light, their strikes producing arcs of energy that crackled through the air. "What are they using?" Yelena asked, her eyes glued to the weapons. "Gravtech blades," Ryland replied, "capable of cutting through most materials while creating minimal shockwaves. Perfect for close combat." Yelena's gaze shifted to another group, where humans were sparring with drones. The machines moved unpredictably, firing harmless energy pulses that the warriors dodged with incredible agility. One warrior leaped into the air, twisting mid-flight to land a precise strike that disabled a drone. The display was breathtaking. "How can you move like that?" she asked, turning to Rylan. "Your speed, your precision. It's almost unnatural." Rylan smirked. "Training. And enhancements." "Enhancements." Yelena's brow furrowed. He raised his arm, tapping a small device embedded just below his wrist. "Augmented reflexes, enhanced strength, neural link technology. Every warrior here has undergone years of conditioning and upgrades. It's what allows us to stand against threats that would overwhelm most species." Yelena felt a mix of awe and unease. The humans weren't just warriors. They were something more, a blend of biology and technology that seemed almost alien themselves. But as impressive as their abilities were, she couldn't shake the feeling that they carried a heavy burden. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice quieter now. "Why hide here, on Volara, instead of revealing yourselves to the galaxy?" Ryland's expression darkened. "Because the galaxy isn't ready for us, and because we aren't fighting for glory or recognition. We're fighting to survive." He led her toward a massive holographic display near the center of the base. It projected a map of the galaxy, with certain regions highlighted in red. Ryland pointed to one of the red zones. "This is the Carthax Dominion, a species that doesn't negotiate, doesn't reason. They conquer and consume. They've already taken dozens of systems, wiping out entire civilizations. Yelena stared at the map, her stomach knotting. The red zones were spreading, creeping closer to Valera's sector. "And your people?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What's your role in this?" "We were their first victims," Ryland said, his tone grim. "Centuries ago, the Carthax nearly wiped us out. They underestimated us, though. Humanity scattered, rebuilding in secret. We've been preparing ever since, training warriors on hidden worlds like this one. Our goal is simple: stop the Carthax before they reach planets like yours." Yelena felt a chill run down her spine. The humans weren't just myths. They were guardians, fighting a war that most of the galaxy was blissfully unaware of. But the weight of their mission was staggering. For every victory, there were countless losses. For every warrior trained, there was a family left behind. As she processed this, a loud alarm blared across the base. The humans around her snapped to attention, their movements precise and coordinated. Ryland's communicator buzzed, and he answered it with a curt nod. "What's happening?" Yelena asked. "Carthax scout ship," Ryland said, his jaw tightening. "It's close. Too close." The energy in the base shifted instantly. Warriors armed themselves, and drones were redirected to defensive positions. Yelena watched in stunned silence as the humans transformed from a group of trainers and trainees into a well-oiled war machine. "You said you wanted to understand," Ryland said, turning to her. "Well, here's your chance. Stay here, or come with me, and see what we're fighting against." Yelena hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "I'm coming." Ryland gave a faint smile. "Then stay close. You're about to learn why humans were never just a myth." As they moved toward the edge of the base, where sleek, battle-ready vehicles awaited, Yelena felt a mix of fear and determination. The truth about human warriors was more than she'd imagined. They weren't just real. They were humanity's last hope, and now, perhaps, Valera's as well. The galactic threat. The air inside the human transport was thick with tension. The hum of the ship's engines reverberated through Yelena's bones as it ascended into Valera's stratosphere. The sleek craft was unlike anything she had seen before. Every surface seemed optimized for function, its design reflecting a singular purpose: war. Captain Ryland stood at the helm, scanning a holographic map projected in midair. The map displayed a red blip moving steadily toward Valera's orbit. Yelena sat silently in a corner, her gaze flickering between the warriors around her. Their faces, though calm, bore the weight of countless battles. These weren't mere soldiers. They were survivors. "We've detected a Carthax scout ship," Ryland announced, his voice breaking the silence. "It's small but heavily armed. Their kind never travels alone for long. If we don't neutralize it quickly, they'll send a signal back to their fleet, and Valera will have a full invasion force on its doorstep." Yelena's heart sank. Her world wasn't prepared for a conflict of this magnitude. The Valerans had lived in peace for generations, relying on diplomacy and their planet's isolation to avoid galactic disputes. The idea of an enemy like the Carthax was unfathomable. "What do they want?" Yelena asked, her voice trembling. "Why attack planets like ours?" Ryland glanced at her, his expression hard. "Resources, slaves, genetic material. The Carthax don't discriminate. They take what they want, and they destroy what they can't use." Yelena felt a shiver crawl down her spine. The stories she'd heard about the Carthax were sparse, but the fragments she remembered painted them as ruthless conquerors. Now, hearing it confirmed by someone who had faced them firsthand, the threat felt far more real. The ship shuddered as it broke through the atmosphere, and the red blip on the holographic map grew larger. Yelena leaned closer to the display, her curiosity overriding her fear. The Carthax ship was sleek and angular, its dark hull reflecting the light of Valera's twin moons. It moved with an eerie grace, like a predator stalking its prey. "Prepare for engagement," Ryland commanded. The warriors around him sprang into action, their movements swift and precise. Weapons were checked, armor adjusted, and a sense of quiet determination filled the cabin. One of the warriors, a woman named Mira, handed Elena a small device. "Put this on," she said. "It's a personal shield. It won't make you invincible, but it'll give you a chance if things go south." Elena fumbled with the device, strapping it to her wrist. "I didn't come here to fight," she said nervously. "Good," Mira replied, a faint smirk on her lips. "Leave the fighting to us. Just stay out of the way and don't touch anything." The ship's lights dimmed as it entered stealth mode. Through a narrow viewport, Elena could see the Carthax ship looming closer. It was larger than she'd expected, its surface covered in intricate, pulsating patterns that seemed almost alive. As the human ship approached, the Carthax vessel suddenly shifted, its sleek form bristling with weapons. "They spotted us," Ryland said grimly. "Mira, take the helm. Engage evasive maneuvers." The ship lurched as Mira expertly piloted it through a series of sharp turns. Beams of energy streaked past them, each one narrowly missing its mark. The Carthax were fast, but the humans were faster. "Returning fire," one of the warriors reported, his fingers flying over a console. The ship's cannons roared to life, sending a barrage of plasma rounds toward the enemy vessel. The first few shots were deflected by the Carthax's shields, but the humans didn't relent. Their strategy was precise, targeting weak points in the ship's armor. Elena clung to her seat, her heart racing as the battle unfolded. The sheer coordination of the humans was astounding. Every movement, every command was executed with flawless precision. It was as if they could anticipate each other's actions, moving as a single entity rather than individuals. Then, without warning, the Carthax ship launched a counterattack. A massive energy blast struck the human ship's side, sending it spiraling. Sparks flew from the consoles, and alarms blared as the warriors scrambled to stabilize the craft. "Shields at 60%. Someone shouted. Ryland's expression remained calm, though his jaw tightened. "Focus fire on their engines. We're not leaving until they're disabled." As the ship steadied, Elena noticed something strange. On the holographic display, the Carthax ship's movements became erratic. It was as if it were struggling to maintain control. She leaned closer, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. "They're stalling," she said, her voice barely audible. Ryland glanced at her. "What?" "They're not trying to destroy you," Elena said, her mind racing. "They're trying to delay you." Ryland's eyes narrowed. "Mira, scan for signals. If they're sending a message." Before he could finish, the display lit up with a new alert. A faint signal was emanating from the Carthax ship, directed toward deep space. "They're calling reinforcements," Mira confirmed, her tone grim. "We have less than 5 minutes before their fleet arrives." Ryland's gaze hardened. "Then we finish this now." The ship's cannons roared again, this time with renewed ferocity. The Carthax ship's shields flickered and failed, and a well-placed shot tore through its engines. The enemy vessel shuddered and went dark, drifting aimlessly. "Signal neutralized," Mira reported. "No reinforcements detected." The cabin erupted in a chorus of relieved cheers, but Elena's relief was short-lived. She stared at the darkened Carthax ship, a sinking feeling in her chest. The humans had won this battle, but the war was far from over. "What now?" she asked softly. Ryland turned to her, his expression somber. "Now we prepare for the inevitable. The Carthax know we're here. It's only a matter of time before they come for us, and for Vollara." As the ship began its descent back to the planet, Elena realized the full gravity of what she had become a part of. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for everyone who didn't even know the danger existed. And now, so was she. Betrayal among allies. The council chamber of Vollara was a masterpiece of elegance and history. Massive crystal columns supported the domed ceiling, which shimmered with constellations mapped over centuries. The chamber, usually a symbol of harmony and wisdom, now buzzed with tension. Yelena stood at its center, flanked by two human warriors, their presence an uneasy reminder of the storm brewing just beyond the stars. Yelena had spent the last 2 days persuading the humans to let her warn her people. They had been reluctant, knowing the risk of exposing their presence, but Raylan eventually relented. "If your people don't believe you, this planet is lost," he had said. Now, as Yelena stood before the gathered council members, she realized just how monumental her task was. "The Carthax are real," she began, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Their scout ship was destroyed near our orbit, but that's only the beginning. They'll come back, and when they do, we won't be ready. We need to prepare, and we need the humans' help." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Their leader, Elder Kasser, leaned forward, his silver robes catching the light. "Humans?" he repeated, his tone skeptical. "Yelena, you're telling us that the myths of human warriors are real, and that they've been hiding on our planet?" "Yes," Yelena said firmly. "I've seen them. I've seen what they can do. Their technology, their training. They're the only reason the Carthax scout ship didn't signal reinforcements." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some council members seemed intrigued, while others openly scoffed. "This is absurd," one of them said. "If the humans were real, why would they hide? Why not reveal themselves to the galaxy?" "They're not hiding out of fear," Yelena explained. "They've been preparing, training in secret, watching for the right time to act. They've already faced the Carthax and survived. And you expect us to believe this based on your word alone?" Kasser asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Before Yelena could respond, Rylan stepped forward. His presence commanded immediate attention, and the room fell silent. "Her word isn't all you have," he said, his voice steady. "I am Captain Rylan of the Human Vanguard. We are not myths. We are real, and we are here to help, if you are willing to listen." Gasps filled the chamber as the council members took in the sight of Rylan. His battle-worn armor and sharp gaze left little room for doubt. The humans behind him stood at attention, their every movement radiating discipline and strength. Elder Kasser's expression faltered, but he quickly recovered. "If what you say is true, Captain, then you understand the magnitude of this revelation. The people of Valora will not easily accept the presence of an unknown species on our planet." "We're not asking for acceptance," Ryland said. "We're offering a chance to fight back. The Carthax won't stop with a single scout ship. If we don't act now, Valora will fall." The chamber erupted into debate, voices rising as council members argued over the implications of Yelena's warning and the humans' presence. Amid the chaos, one council member, a stern-faced man named Ardik, stood and raised his hand. The room quieted. "While this all sounds compelling," Ardik began, his tone cold, "how do we know this isn't a ploy? The humans could be using this Carthax threat as a way to gain our trust and take control." Yelena's frustration boiled over. "Do you think I would risk my reputation, my life, just to bring you lies? I've seen what the Carthax can do. They're coming, and if we don't unite, we're doomed." Ardik's lips curled into a thin smile. "And yet you've aligned yourself with an unknown force, bringing them into our council chamber without proof of their intentions." Ryland stepped forward again, his eyes narrowing. "If we wanted control, we wouldn't be standing here explaining ourselves. We'd let the Carthax destroy you and deal with the aftermath." Ardik's smile faded, but before he could reply, the chamber doors burst open. A panicked guard stumbled in, his face pale. "Elder Kasser, we've been infiltrated," he cried. "Carthax agents. They're here." The room froze. Yelena's blood ran cold as the words sank in. The Carthax were already on Valora. Before anyone could react, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber. The crystal columns trembled, and shards of glass rained down as smoke filled the room. Through the chaos, Yelena saw figures emerging from the shadows, tall, insectoid creatures with gleaming exoskeletons and sharp predatory eyes. The Carthax. Protect the council, Ryland shouted, drawing his weapon. The humans sprang into action, their movements precise and efficient. Energy blasts lit up the chamber as the humans engaged the Carthax, their weapons cutting through the invaders' defenses. Yelena ducked behind a fallen column, her heart pounding. She watched as the humans fought with unmatched skill, their teamwork seamless. Ryland took down 2 Carthax agents with swift, calculated strikes, while Mira coordinated the others to form a defensive perimeter around the remaining council members. Amid the chaos, Yelena noticed something strange. Arctic was moving toward the edge of the room, away from the battle. Her eyes narrowed as she saw him reach into his robes and pull out a small device, a communicator. Realization hit her like a blow. "Arctic," she shouted, "what are you doing?" But it was too late. Arctic activated the device, and a sharp, piercing sound filled the air. The Carthax agents halted their attack, retreating toward the shattered windows. In seconds, they were gone, leaving only destruction in their wake. Ryland approached Arctic, his weapon raised. "What did you do?" he demanded. Arctic's expression was unreadable. "I made a choice. The Carthax have promised me power in exchange for cooperation. Your kind is too dangerous, too unpredictable. Volera doesn't need humans. It needs order." "You betrayed your own people," Yelena said, her voice shaking with anger. "You've doomed us all." Arctic sneered. "Doomed? No. I've ensured our survival." Ryland's gaze hardened. "You've ensured nothing. The Carthax don't honor deals. They exploit them. And now, thanks to you, they know we're vulnerable." As guards moved to detain Arctic, Yelena turned to Ryland. "What do we do now?" Ryland's expression was grim. "We prepare. The Carthax will return, and next time, they won't be sending scouts." Yelena nodded, determination replacing her fear. The battle had only begun, and she was ready to fight for Volera and for the truth. Rallying the resistance. The days following the Carthax attack were filled with tension and uncertainty. The council chambers had been rebuilt in record time, but the damage to Volera's spirit was far deeper. Trust had been shattered, and fear spread faster than the rumors of Arctic's betrayal. The human warriors had done their best to stabilize the situation, but it was clear that Volera was not ready for the war that was rapidly approaching. Yelena had never seen her world so divided. On one hand, there were those who still clung to the hope that diplomacy and peaceful negotiation could stave off the Carthax. On the other hand, there were the realists, those who had seen the battle firsthand and knew that without human help, Volera would fall. She spent her days visiting villages, speaking with leaders, trying to rally the people to fight alongside the humans. It wasn't easy. Volerans had always been a peaceful species, priding themselves on their isolation from galactic conflicts. War had never been part of their nature, and now, in the face of an enemy that seemed unstoppable, many refused to believe that the Carthax were truly coming for them. One afternoon, Yelena found herself in the heart of a small village, standing before a crowd of hesitant villagers. She had spent hours trying to convince them, but their doubts were clear. Her words were met with silence, and the eyes of the crowd were filled with skepticism. "I know this isn't easy," Yelena began, her voice carrying across the square. "I know you don't want to believe that the Carthax are real, that we're facing an invasion that could wipe us all out. But I've seen them. I've fought beside humans who have faced the Carthax before. And I can tell you this, they are not invincible. We have a chance, but only if we fight together." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the younger Volerans seemed to be swayed, but the older generation remained unconvinced. Yelena's heart sank. Time was running out. Just then, a loud voice broke through the silence. "What are you asking us to do, Yelena? Fight alongside these humans. Fight a war we don't understand." Yelena turned to see Jarek, the village leader, stepping forward. His face was lined with years of wisdom, but his eyes were filled with doubt. We've lived in peace for centuries. Our ancestors built this world to be free from the strife of the galaxy. Why should we risk it all for something that might not even be real? Yelena met his gaze, her expression unwavering. Because the Carthax don't care about our peace. They'll destroy everything we've built without a second thought. If we don't unite with the humans, we'll be left to fight alone, and we won't survive. Jarek's eyes softened, but the doubt remained. What if we're wrong? What if this is all just a misunderstanding? It's not, Yelena said firmly. The Carthax don't negotiate. They conquer. And they'll come for us just as they've come for others. We have no choice but to fight. The silence hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. Yelena could see the conflict in the eyes of the villagers. They wanted to believe her, but they couldn't bring themselves to trust the unknown humans. But then, something unexpected happened. A young woman stepped forward from the back of the crowd. Her name was Kyra, and she was known for her skills in engineering. She had spent years working with the local technology, building and maintaining the advanced systems that powered Volera's cities. She wasn't a warrior, but she had a fire in her eyes that spoke of resolve. I've seen the technology the humans have, Kyra said, her voice steady. I've seen their weapons, their ships, and I've seen their warriors. They're not lying. I'm not a fighter, but I can help build the tools we need to survive. The crowd fell quiet as Kyra's words sank in. One by one, others began to step forward. A teacher, a farmer, a healer, all of them had their doubts, but they also had a shared desire to protect their world. The realization slowly began to settle in. The time for debate was over. The Carthax were coming, and they needed to fight. By the end of the day, a plan had started to take shape. Volera's best engineers, scientists, and strategists would work alongside the humans, integrating their technologies with Volera's advanced systems. The human warriors would train the Volerans in combat, teaching them how to defend themselves against the Carthax. And most importantly, they would prepare for the coming battle, uniting their forces to stand as one. Over the following weeks, the atmosphere on Volera began to change. The once divided population now had a common goal: survival. The once distrustful Volerans slowly began to accept the humans as allies, and in turn, the humans showed them what they were capable of. Training camps sprang up across the planet, where Volerans learned to wield weapons and defend their homes. The human warriors taught them not just how to fight, but how to think like soldiers, how to stay calm in the face of danger and trust in their team. Yelena watched as the people of Volera, once peaceful and divided, began to transform into something stronger. They were no longer just farmers, scientists, and teachers. They were becoming warriors. But it wasn't just about the weapons or the combat training. It was about the resolve to protect what they loved, the understanding that unity was their greatest strength. One evening, as Yelena stood overlooking the training grounds, she felt a shift in the air. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light across the planet. It was a moment of quiet before the storm. She knew that the Carthax would come soon. Maybe sooner than anyone expected. But now, Volera was no longer alone. The humans were with them, and together, they stood a chance. Rylan approached her, his face as unreadable as ever. "You did it," he said simply. Yelena turned to him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "No, we did it." Together, they had rallied the resistance. Now, all they could do was wait for the Carthax to make their move. But as Yelena looked around at the faces of those who had once been hesitant, now filled with determination, she knew that Volera would fight. And this time, they wouldn't be caught off guard. The battle was coming, but for the first time, Volera stood united, ready to defend their world against the darkness that threatened to consume it. The battle for survival. The first sign that the Carthax were coming came in the form of a low rumble beneath Volera's surface. It wasn't just the ground shaking. It was the planet itself, as if it had sensed the weight of the impending invasion. The warnings had been sent. Volera was no longer hidden. The Carthax had discovered the resistance and would stop at nothing to wipe it out. Yelena stood on the observation deck of the human vanguard's main command center, staring out at the night sky. It had been weeks since the last attack, and the preparations had been relentless. The training, the tech integration, the building of defenses, all of it had been leading to this moment. She could feel it in her bones. This was no longer a fight for survival. This was the final stand. "Captain Rylan," Yelena said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We've got one shot at this. If we fail—" "We won't fail," Rylan interrupted, his tone firm and confident. He stood next to her, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the distant stars. "We've prepared for this. The humans and Volorans are ready. All we need to do now is hold the line." But even as Rylan spoke, Yelena couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Her instincts screamed that the Carthax were more prepared than anyone realized. The fleet they were facing wasn't just a group of invaders. It was an army, a well-organized, ruthless force that wouldn't hesitate to use every dirty trick in their arsenal. The first wave hit just before dawn. The sky turned crimson with the glow of distant explosions as Carthax warships entered Volara's atmosphere. Their ships were unlike anything Yelena had ever seen. Dark, angular, and menacing, with jagged edges and shifting metal surfaces that seemed to ripple with an unnatural energy. As they descended, they launched waves of smaller drones, each one a deadly projectile designed to break through any defense. "Incoming," a voice shouted from the command center, followed by the rapid sound of footsteps as warriors scrambled into position. Rylan's expression hardened as he turned to his team. "Prepare for battle. Make sure they don't breach our defenses." Yelena watched in awe as the humans sprang into action. Their movements were a blur of practiced coordination, each warrior knowing exactly where to go, what to do, and when to act. The command center hummed with energy as Valoran engineers powered up the planetary shields, their fingers flying over holographic consoles. The first wave of Carthax drones hit the planet's outer defenses with a terrifying force, sending shockwaves that rattled buildings and caused the sky to flare with energy. Voldaran defenses responded with a barrage of plasma fire, but the drones were fast and relentless. They weaved through the blasts, dodging and counterattacking with precision that left the Volarans scrambling to adjust their strategy. "Hold your ground," Rylan bellowed into his comms device. "We need to buy time for the main force. All units, fall back to defensive positions." The Carthax ships above began deploying their soldiers, hulking insectoid creatures that landed with a bone-shattering thud on Volara's surface. They were massive, covered in thick exoskeletons that made them nearly indestructible. The warriors' weapons, glowing with deadly energy, lit up the battlefield as the Carthax charged forward, their battle cries echoing through the air. "Don't let them advance," one of the human commanders shouted as the first wave of Carthax warriors collided with the Valoran forces. Yelena found herself at the front of the battle, caught between the humans and Volarans. She wasn't a fighter. She had no training in combat. But she knew that this was her moment. This was the culmination of everything she had worked for. She couldn't afford to stand on the sidelines. A Carthax warrior swung a massive energy blade toward a Valoran soldier, its deadly arc flashing through the air. Without thinking, Yelena grabbed a weapon from a nearby fallen soldier. It was crude compared to the humans' advanced technology, but it was enough. She charged at the Carthax warrior, using the momentum to knock it off balance and deliver a well-aimed strike to its chest. The blade shattered, sending sparks flying. "Nice move," a voice said from behind her. She turned to see Rylan, his face grim but approving. "But stay close. You're more useful to us alive." Yelena nodded, her heart pounding. There was no time to think. The Carthax were everywhere, their numbers overwhelming. But the humans weren't backing down. The warriors fought with precision and discipline, their movements sharp and calculated. Every strike, every move was part of a larger plan. The Valoran warriors, though inexperienced, fought with heart. They had something to protect, something worth fighting for. As the Carthax advanced, they began to fall back, using their knowledge of the terrain to set traps and slow the enemy down. Valderan soldiers fought alongside the humans, picking off Carthax soldiers in coordinated attacks. Raylan, the outer shields are failing. One of the Valderan engineers called out over the comms. We need more time to recharge. Yelena's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. If the shields failed completely, Volara would be defenseless. The Carthax could land troops at will, and there would be nothing to stop them. We can't afford to wait, Ryland shouted. Mira, get the secondary defense systems online. We need that power now. Mira, a human tech specialist, was already working her way toward the central control tower, dodging enemy fire as she went. Her fingers flew over the holographic interface, triggering emergency power to the planet's defenses. The shields flickered and pulsed, then solidified once more, pushing back the Carthax forces momentarily. Shields back online, Mira reported, panting. But it won't last long. We're not out of this yet, Ryland muttered, his eyes scanning the horizon. The Carthax were relentless, and their forces were only growing stronger. Yelena stood beside him, watching as the humans and Valerans pushed back the Carthax warriors, one battle at a time. But she knew this was only the beginning. The Carthax would come again, stronger, more prepared. Volera's survival depended on one thing, whether they could hold the line. This is it, Yelena whispered to herself. We fight, or we die. And as the sounds of battle raged around her, she realized that she was no longer just an observer. She was part of something much larger, a fight for survival that would determine the future of Volara, humanity, and the galaxy itself. She could hear the battle cries of the warriors, the roar of ships above, and the pounding of feet against the earth. They were fighting not just for their planet, but for their very existence. In that moment, Yelena knew one thing with certainty. They would not go down without a fight. They would stand together, and they would survive.